Good afternoon, colleagues. Kindly confirm that I am audible.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that confirmation. Good afternoon to everyone and welcome to our webinar, whose title is Boosting Employee Engagement and Productivity, really reflecting on the future of internal communications. My name is Chungu Malikongwa. I am the Senior Manager, Corporate Affairs, responsible for brand and employee communication at the Botswana Diamond Company, based in Gaborone, Botswana, and I'm delighted, excited to be your host today. We have an exciting session for you, colleagues, and we will be focusing on how effective internal communication can significantly boost employee engagement and productivity. And in doing so, we will premise our webinar on the insights from the 2023-2024 Gallagher State of the Sector report, specifically around the impact of measurement in employee communications, channel usage and effectiveness, and I think more importantly, leveraging on technology using digital tools to enhance our employee communication, which our guest, speaker, Federico Tutsi, director from CLA, will speak to that in greater detail. Before we proceed with our main topic, please allow me to introduce the Internal Association of Business Communicators, IABC Africa. I think colleagues on the call, some of you are members of IABC, and you are aware that IABC is a global network of professionals committed to improving organizational communication. The company that I work for, the Botswana Diamond Company, is a corporate member of IABC Africa. And I can bear testimony together with my colleagues on this webinar that some of the benefits that we have derived from being a member of IABC Africa include being able to access a wealth of resources, including professional development opportunities, networking events, and the latest industry insights. Being a member also allows one to benefit from a supportive professional community that fosters growth and learning. I think additionally, colleagues on the webinar, being part of IABC offers numerous professional advancement through its Global Communication Certification Council, GCCC. And these include Strategic Communication Management Professional Certification, SCMP. It also includes Communication Management Professional Certification, which is CMP. And both of these, colleagues, are globally recognized certification, and they validate your expertise as a communication practitioner, but also, and I think more importantly, enhance your credibility for career prospects. With that, colleagues, we will move on to giving you Slight technical glitch, colleagues. We're trying to move the slide deck a page down. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I think with that introduction, I just want to take you very briefly and give you an overview of our webinar outline. Firstly, colleagues, we will make reference, like I said earlier, to the 2023-2024 Gallagher State of the Sector report, really looking at the impact of measurement in employee communication, channel usage and effectiveness, and also, more importantly, leveraging on technology, using digital tools to enhance employee communication. We will then move on to receive a case study on the use of digital tools to enhance employee communication and measurement, which we'll receive from our guest speaker, Federico Tutsi, and then move on to a Q&A session that will be facilitated by my colleague, Messi Kosi Dialwa, who is our Botswana Digital Communications Manager. And then we'll reflect and have our closing remarks. We have an hour for this webinar, and I think between myself and the guest speaker, we'll ensure that we cover as much ground as possible to allow you to, engage with us. There will be a Q&A session, and we request that you kindly post as many questions as you'd like, and we will address as many of those questions as possible when we get to the Q&A segment of this webinar. I think with that, colleagues, I will quickly move on in terms of touching on some of the key insights that we can reflect on. And just to state that the 2023-2024 Gallagher State of the Sector report really harvested a large part of its data from, Europe, America, and Asia. But I think you'll agree with me as we look at key takeouts of this in relation to impact measuring and improving employee communication. We're able to draw parallels from the Africa region, and I think the insights and the outputs of the data in this report really we can relate to. So with regards to the impact of measurement and employee communication and delivering business outcomes, there are 4 buckets that I really want us to explore. And the 4 buckets really, it's firstly around communication and getting better at measuring communication impact. Another second bucket that I'd like us to look at is really key insights. I think you'll all agree with me as a community of communication practitioners that measurement is now a huge call to action. And moving on to the third bucket there is really what is the missing piece in this puzzle of impactful measurement and delivering business outcome. The last bucket that I'll speak to is really to us as communication practitioners, the community of communication practitioners, to say what is the takeout of this particular aspect of the Gallagher report. You will note that each of these buckets have got a little icon. The first one, which speaks to where we are and how we are evolving, it's got a little plane lifting off to say that we are evolving. The next one, there's a light bulb to say what are the key insights. And the next one, there's a piece of a puzzle to address what is the missing piece in this puzzle. And then, of course, in the last bucket, it's a couple of heads, really demonstrating the community of communication practitioners. But I think very briefly, the first bucket really from the Gallagher report says we can really pat ourselves on the shoulder to say that as communicators, we are getting better at measuring impact in the work that we do. And I think you'll all agree with me that as communication practitioners, we are increasingly being called upon to demonstrate the efficacy of the work that we do, and mounting pressure to demonstrate our contribution to the bottom line. We're seeing robust measurements going hand in hand with our strategic approach and helping to deliver on our business outcomes. The light bulb there in terms of key insights, I think you'll agree with me that yes, we continue to experience challenges in setting practical measures. And I think my colleague Federico will speak to that in greater detail. And the challenges in setting practical measures that ultimately drive overall engagement, especially given that, and you'll be aware of it, that so many factors are beyond our grasp as communication teams. So I think what we need to do is to develop partners across the business, because the responsibility of overall engagement does not necessarily lie with communication practitioners. We need to forge relations with our IM colleagues, with our HR colleagues, and more importantly, with core business of our businesses. For example, I'm in diamond mining, and I always say, if your internal communication strategy does not address the business strategy, then you are good as not having an internal communication strategy, because we are an enabler for the business. We're an enabler in ensuring that our employees are endeared to the purpose, mission, vision of our companies so that they know what's in it for them and how they can truly assist the business in meeting its intended goals and objectives. The missing puzzle there, I think for me, what the missing puzzle is that most of us communicate practitioners are remote to the company strategy's execution. And this is a real gap. We work for companies, come in as communication practitioners, and have very little interest in core business and what the strategy of the company, whatever strategic period window it is, intends to deliver. And in fact, the gap therein lies the fact that that is where we derive our content in terms of the strategic imperatives of the business and, the purpose, mission, and vision. Those are the key underlying factors where we derive. So if we don't make it our business to come into a company, and the first thing that we need to do is self-learning. Let's endear ourselves to learning about the company so that we improve the level of communication as an enabler to assist employees in our brand equity initiatives. The last one I will draw in Frederico. Basically, this is really a takeaway for communication practitioners, community of communication practitioners. I think, Frederico, you'll agree with me that there's a growing eagerness to prove return on investment in driving demand for measurement in the space that we're in more than ever before. And before I draw you in, I'd also like you to speak to these top 5 challenges of impact measurements, which are evidence, effective reach, channel preference, leader-led communication, as well as using the diversity, equity, and inclusion lens in tailoring our communication. Very recently, I will share with you in one of the slides the outcomes of our 2023 internal communications effectiveness audit, where our younger, more youthful employees are more inclined to receiving communications through digital tools, where our elderly are quite happy to receive, huge reports, lengthy communication, the old traditional. So there's a balance between traditional and contemporary challenges. And as that, plays out, we are seeing that, the demographics of our employees demands that it's not one size fits all. Thank you. Over to you, Frederico.
Yeah, thank you, Shingu. You make a very valid point. There is no... Yeah.
I was just reminding colleagues to post their comments, questions on the chat of this webinar. We will have a Q&A segment towards the end. Over to you, Frederico. Sorry about that interruption.
No problems. Thank you, Shingu. Absolutely. I think one of the key challenges you spoke about, the top 5 challenges about impact measurements. I mean, they all have the same message, is that we have an increasing need to justify investments, whether it is using traditional tools, whether it's using innovative platforms. We are under more and more pressure to provide the evidence that a particular communication was read, whether it's for governance and compliance purposes, whether it's to enforce policies and procedures. There's a growing need and requirement to provide that evidence, and this is a real challenge, and that is why part of this webinar is actually about embracing and encouraging organizations to embrace technology, because the measurement element for a traditional channel like email is virtually impossible. It's how do you know how many people opened an email, read an email, opened an attachment? But using more innovative platforms, it is very easy to have that data at your fingertips to see exactly who read, who saw, who opened, at what time, and all of this data is available for, firstly, to justify ROI, but also for accountability and general measurement.
Thanks for that, Frederico. I like your example around the email. And I think when we sit around the table and reflect on our profession, we always say, you know what, it's one thing that we need to get away from, and it's the spray and pray approach, where you spray the message and hope that it is read. Spray and pray that the message is read. So I think just on the example of the email, if I just briefly touch on that, I think sending out an email is no longer enough. It's important to find out that it has been received, it has been opened, it has been read, and most importantly, it has been understood. So I think moving on to the next area, I think the last but one in terms of the premising the Gallagher 2023 and 2024 report is really around channel usage and effectiveness. I won't go much into this, but I think the report talks about, your broadcast channels, the fact that, some of them digital signage, effectiveness is 72, but usage on our part is 48%. Self-service channels are now becoming more popular, 71 effectiveness, but 10% usage. Comms champions, yes, effectiveness is still there, 82%, but 30. On this one, I think there's one point that I just want to make, that you will all remember that at the advent of COVID-19, we moved towards virtual platforms. However, the recent trends point to the fact that face-to-face still dominates, and it's still an all-time favorite. Spin side of that is that your C-suite, your managers prefer web calls because this really has got your real-time delivery. And they have an appetite for real-time delivery and real-time communication. And just looking at the significant usage changes in 2023, broadcast has gone up by 7%. Your more traditional letters have gone down by 7%. In the interest of time, I'll just quickly go through what I'd want to share with you in terms of data from our 2023 Debswana Annual Employee Effectiveness Communications Channel. Preferred channels, email time. We have a largest private sector employer with about 5,000 employees. Most of them are elderly. So it's not surprising that your email type message is rated at 36%. But we have emerging demographics regarding our diversity and equity inclusion. SMSs are at 4%, but I can assure you that our younger and more youthful employees prefer shorter messages and prefer your WhatsApps. And face-to-face colleagues is still important. Site visits by leadership is still a preferred mode of communication. This one is a bit of a busy slide, but it's really what we did in terms of preferred communication by age. You'll see that your WhatsApp, it's your more youthful employees, your SMSs, or your more youthful, your newsletters and your emails, your more elderly. Left with a few minutes before I introduce our guest speaker. The next insight really, which he will speak to in greater detail, is how do we leverage on technology using digital tools to enhance employee communication? I think technology has become an important lever of our communication, artificial intelligence as well. So there's some insights that we have in that regard, which I think my guest speaker will refer to. But I think just here again, sharing insights from our Debswana 2023 communications audit. I think you will see that use of digital mobile-friendly channels is preferred. Challenges that we've got offline employees, and I think we are hoping to hear from Frederico that digital technology will help us in reaching out to offline employees. Thank you very much, colleagues. And on that note, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Frederico Tozi. He's the director for CLA. And having graduated from Wits University with an honors degree in information technology, Frederico has a tech background and spent several years designing innovative tech solutions. Frederico has also spent 15 years designing a platform that solves the obstacles which we face every day when trying to engage effectively with our employees. And he's the founder and inventor of a product called CLA, which is an innovative internal communications platform designed to boost employee engagement and also accurately measure some of the communication participation and campaigns that we deliver to our internal audiences. With that, please join me in inviting Frederico to give us his presentation. I will stop sharing, Frederico, and hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shungu. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to IABC and for inviting me to speak today. I can see why I was asked to speak, because the topics of today's webinar speaks about boosting employee engagement, but very specifically with the use of technology. So how can technology aid the boosting of communication, but very specifically, how does it solve the communication gap? And the gap we have today, and we looked at some slides here from that Shungu shared with us, is that the channels that are in use, there are many channels in use, but some of them have become noisy. Okay, and that's a fact. So if you are using WhatsApps and you're relying only on WhatsApp, I have WhatsApps for my children's school, for the security company. I've got for my residential, for my office. I've got for the community. So if I'm going to receive a WhatsApp from my company with an urgent policy or announcement, it's unlikely that I'm going to see it because I have so many other WhatsApp channels. Likewise with email. Email is the biggest culprit. A statistic shows that the average corporate PC user receives in excess of 140 emails a day. Now, 140 emails a day is pretty much a full-time job. You could actually spend your whole day in front of your inbox and get nothing else done, but that's not achievable. So we come out of a meeting, we get back to our desk, we scan through our inbox, we try and see what is the most important email that is available and address that before we then have to run into our next meeting. Now, if in and amongst our inboxes there is a message from internal comms, or there's a new HR policy or a new health and safety announcement, such as a company like Debswana would have health and safety training, these messages are going to be lost. Not because people don't care, it's because it's just practically impossible and unrealistic to expect every single email to be seen in a short space of time. So email is a problem, and in fact there's a term that's been coined, and that's called inbox fatigue. That's basically people's inability to remain on top of the inbox. So if you are an internal communicator and you are using email as your primary channel of communication, I don't want to say you're wasting your time, but it is going to be a difficult road for you to be able to engage effectively with staff. So what I'm going to take you through is CLA. It's a platform which has been around for about 15 years. We've got over 200,000 users across corporate South Africa, and other countries outside of South Africa as well. But about 200,000 users spanning over 100 companies. And one thing's for sure is that the measurement is one of the key features that you'll see when I take you through a presentation. So I'm going to try and perform something very difficult. I'm taking a 1-hour demo and compressing it into less than half an hour. So I'm going to try my best. So in order to do that, I'm going to fast forward on a few sections. And the first thing I want to take you through is, so I'm going to share my screen. So if you could please just let me know when you're able to see my screen. I'm going to quickly hit on the share here. If you could tell me when you see the standard Windows desktop background.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover what we call our 3 subliminal channels. Now, when we say subliminal channels, we're essentially saying that, how do we communicate with employees, but in a way that they don't even realize it's happened? Very subtle, very background. There is no call to action. There is no a requirement for the user to do anything other than to actually work with their eyes open. So what we've got here is a standard Windows desktop background. I've got applications open, which incidentally is one of our reports. So I will get to this a bit later. But let's say I'm busy working in Excel. The common typical PC user is going to switch between an application and their desktop background to access files or folders or icons that they've left on their wallpaper. Now, we're all guilty of having files or folders on our desktop. I actually cleaned mine up a little bit before this demo. But we're all going to have some desktop icons on our background. And then what we'll do is we'll switch back to an application, carry on working. And this switching between applications and accessing the desktop is something we do multiple times during the day. And you'll see why that's important in a second. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce the first of our 3 subliminal channels. Now, this is one of our mining clients, Anglo American. And what you'll see is that this is a typical screensaver. So I get off my desk, I walk away, and rather than just having the Windows logo appearing on my screen or the Windows background waiting for me to type a password, we're able to push screensavers to people's devices. Now, these are all centrally controlled. Internal comms team is able to manage everybody's screensavers. Not everybody has to see the same content, so depending which department you're in, which division, which regional office, different people can see different content. The types of format that are supported through screensavers can be any combination of videos, animated GIFs, static images, web links, so pages from the internet, etc. Now we get back to our desktops, we interrupt our screensavers, and what do we see is the standard Windows login screen. Okay, so this is the login screen I spoke about. This is a very key place of your computer because this is the screen that people see before they actually settle down, log in, and start working for the day. So it's the first screen you see when you boot up, when you come out of sleep or hibernate mode. And as you can see, we're also able to control the content displaying through what is called the Windows login or lock screen. Now, as you can see, there's multiple pictures that can be displayed, and you're able to choose the order in which the images appear and how long each picture displays for. Now remember, super powerful, this particular module, because it is the screen that people are seeing before they actually settle down and start working. So a great place to advertise things like policies, procedures, cyber awareness, health and safety messages, depending what type of business your company is involved in. Then we log back in again, type our passwords, and we get back to our desktops and our applications. Now what you'll see in a few seconds is that the desktop background, which has currently got the Windows logo at the moment, is another one of our modules that we're able to control. So these three modules that I showed you just now, the screensaver, the desktop background, and the lock screen, are all controlled. So this is the administration software console that would be on the desktop or laptop of a internal communicator. And for example, under the modules menu, you would have changed the screensaver or the lock screen by going on those specific menus and publishing the content. You can schedule content in advance, and as I say, you can push different content to different people. Let's have a look at the desktop background. So this again is reinforcing the messages that were seen through the screensaver, but now it's no longer the Windows login screen. You can just see how visible this content is. This was post-COVID. Shungu spoke about, the shift in communication preferences during COVID. Wallpapers, screensavers were widely used during COVID to communicate with employees working from home. The content's constantly replacing on their desktops, and there is no reliance on us having to expect people to open emails, read attachments. All they have to do is work with their eyes open, and inadvertently, throughout the course of the day, they are going to see the messages on the desktop backgrounds repeatedly, multiple times without even wanting to. They're going to see the screensaver coming up on their screens multiple times, and they're going to see the Windows login screens or lock screens multiple times. So these three modules are designed to create increased levels of awareness, educate employees, drive messages, drive campaigns, but very specifically taking away the need for anybody to access emails in order for this message to be delivered. So this is where the high repetition becomes high levels of retention. So those three modules are what we call our subliminal channels, and are designed with, these are non-interactive, just highly repetitive to create awareness. I'm now going to go into the 4 impact modules next. So please remember, if you do have any questions, please remember to post them on the chat, and I will allow enough time at the end to address all the questions. Now what I'm going to touch on is what we call our impact modules. Now this is where there's a specific action that a user is required to take. So if you've got a task that they need to perform, whether you would like them to read a newsletter, whether you want them to answer a questionnaire, whether they need to read an updated policy, but there's a specific task that needs to be done. So you've got a choice. You can either send an email, or you can use one of our impact modules, the first one being the pop-up alert, which I'm going to take you through first. Now, the one stat I shared is that the average user receives about 140 emails a day. The other stat that I'd like to share is that on average, 65% of emails distributed internally for corporate consumption never ever get opened. Now that's a scary, scary statistic, okay? 65% of emails never get opened, of which the bulk of those are internal communication emails. So that's just highlighting the real challenge with using a channel like email for the purposes of communication. So the alternative to using email would be to use an impact module from the CLA toolkit, which is called the pop-up announcement. Now, how does this work? Again, it is created via this interface. So under the modules menu, alongside the 3 subliminal channels, you see that there's a pop-up icon, which is actually the menu that is open at the moment. Very easy interface, wizard-driven. You go next, 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 and the pop-up gets created. Now, again, you're able to target content so that a specific audience receives a specific pop-up on a specific date and at a specific time. The look and feel of this pop-up. So here's an example of the pop-up arriving. You can brand it as you please. You can be as creative as you want. But the important thing is that this pop-up always appears as the topmost window. So no matter which application I switch to, that pop-up will always appear above any other window. So users cannot use the excuse like they use with emails that it landed in their junk or their spam. There is no junk, there is no spam when it comes to pop-ups. These are high priority alert messages that will appear on the person's desktop above their other applications and will get noticed. What you'll see here is that when I move my cursor over this pop-up, it changes to a hand, which means there's something linked to this pop-up. So if I click on it, I expect something to happen. So what can a pop-up open? It can open any type of document, such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF. It can open up a video clip, an audio clip, an intranet article. It can open up a policy, a survey, a ticker tape. It can pretty much open anything you want. And when I spoke about measurement, or when Shungu spoke about measurement in the introduction, under the reporting menu, you'll see that there are a number of reports available, one of which is the pop-up report. And here you'll get to see, you'll be able to measure the exposure of this communication, and whether it's to report back to your investors for an ROI, how much has this channel actually helped you? But if anything, it's about measurement. What reach has your newsletter had? What has been the open rate? How many people clicked it, snoozed it, dismissed it? You'll notice there's an X in the top right-hand corner. This is an optional setting, which is dismissible. So we've made this newsletter optional. If you do not wish to read it, you click the X, it'll disappear. The pop-up will never come back again, but you will be able to see who dismissed it versus who clicked on it. Now I'm going to choose to click on this pop-up. So the pop-up will disappear and open up, apologies, it's open on my other screen, a PDF document that looks something like that. And it'll write back that the pop-up arrived on my screen at, say, 3:31, and it was clicked on at 3:33. And all this data is available in real time, exportable to Excel, and indefinitely. So that is the first of our impact modules, which is called the pop-up announcement. Now, what I'm going to take you through next is our second impact module, which is the survey. Now, when we speak about surveys are very, very poorly participated. And the biggest reason why the participation rates are so low is because companies tend to use tools like Microsoft Forms. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these platforms, but Microsoft Forms, Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, intranet platforms, all of these tools are actually really good. Okay, but there's one common problem that appears for all of them, and that is that the invitation to these surveys always arrive as an email. Whether you're using Microsoft Forms, Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, you're going to get an email. And we know that these emails get ignored. So the alternative is to use the built-in CLA survey, which is delivered via pop-up. So what we see happening here is you've actually got two modules that are being used for the execution of a single campaign. What I'd like to point out here is you'll see that this particular pop-up has got a remind me later button. So you can optionally give the user the opportunity to postpone the pop-up to a later point, but you as the publisher get to choose how long a user is allowed to postpone that pop-up for. So there's quite a few options available. In this case, we offered 2 hours, 4 hours, and 8 hours as the options. You can also limit those snoozes to say, well, I'm going to allow you to snooze it, but after, say, 4 snoozes, you are now no longer able to snooze it any further, and this remind me later button disappears. So we all know how surveys work. I'm going to run through this example very quickly in the interest of saving some time. But our built-in survey module has got 3 features. The one is the ability to gather feedback. The second feature is to do an RSVP. And the third one is to do a testing and training on assessment. Now, this example I'm going to show you, this is the survey title, a short introduction message. We click start now. And you see that there's 7 questions. Now, the first 3 questions will illustrate gathering general feedback. So one is a simple single select where there's a radio button. Then notice you can make some questions anonymous if you wish. The second is a multi-select where you've got text boxes. You can choose more than one option from the list available. And then the last one, here you get to rearrange items in order of importance as you please. So I think comms should be company related, then fun, then informative, and then interactive. So that is my preferred order of importance. So these 3 questions illustrated the functionality of being able to run a simple questionnaire or gather general feedback. What I'd like to show you next is the RSVP function. So let's say, would you like to attend the communications forum meeting on the 28th of September? See, my diary is open on the 28th of September, and I've got no meetings on. If I say no, you can configure the survey to navigate differently. So because I'm not attending that function, the questionnaire jumps straight over to question 7. It skips number 5 and 6 because I'm not attending. Whereas if I say yes, I would like to attend, So first, if you watch Outlook in the background, when I say yes, it puts it directly to my diary, but it also unlocks question 5 because now I'm attending the function, so it's relevant to get my dietary requirement. Now, if I choose vegetarian, again, it skips question 6 and goes straight to question 7, and it's only if I choose other as a dietary requirement, then I'm able to provide specific, dietary, if I've got allergens, etc. So these questions illustrated RSVP, calendar integration, and how you can configure a survey to navigate differently depending on how you answer. Now, the last question, number 7, in which year was the first version of CLA released? Now, one of these is correct, the rest are incorrect. The user knows they're being scored because the next button is labeled as mark. So this is if a company wants to quiz their employees on maybe the products and services they offer. Maybe they want to do a cultural survey to see how well your employees know your company values. In an environment like Botswana, health and safety is a key point. So how well do your employees know around the health and safety protocols? Do they understand the use of protective personal equipment, and what are the rules around that? So let's have a look at how this works. I'm going to say 2009. Remember, the organization well, the product's been going for 15 years, but the company was in fact founded in 2008. So that is the incorrect answer. The correct answer is actually 2008. So it's a bit of training as much as it is testing. And after the conclusion screen, you're able to see how many you got correct and incorrect with a salutation. Click on finish. And now, similar to or the pop-up report, alongside the pop-up report, you'll see there is a survey report. Now, that is the document I showed you earlier, just to quickly take you through. I've done no formatting. This is exactly how the report would export. You see you got your summary on the front showing you what your participation rates are. And incidentally, these are not fictitious summary values. The average CLA engagement rates range from 90 to 95% participation within a day or two. Okay, now that varies greatly to the average participation in things like an email-driven survey, which is anything between 8 and 12% if it's only sent once. So it's quite dismal. So this is what the interface looks like. As I said, I've done no formatting. Your simple, yes/no type questions, whereas your scored questions, such as question number 8, you'll see we'll have 2 pie charts, and you'll be able to not just see the split between options provided, but also what the response rates were. And provided a question is not anonymous, you'll be able to see the responses provided per user with their full name that you've extracted from Active Directory, what PC they were sitting at, and as well as whether they got this particular scored question correct or incorrect. Whereas if it's an anonymous question, all you'll get to see is the summarized breakdown between yes or no. Remember, our first question was anonymous. This first question is in fact also anonymous. I do not get to see individual responses with anonymous questions. So what I'd like to take you through next, if there are if there are questions, please remember to post them on the chat. I have been asked to keep all questions to the end. So what I'm going to take you through next is the ability for CLA to facilitate video training. Now, video training has become a very, very big thing. Very, very expensive, okay, because whether you're doing a live shoot or animation, these things both cost a lot of money. And unfortunately, the exposure to these video training content is quite minimal. And that's purely because content gets loaded on the intranet, and then an email gets sent with a link, and people just ignore that email. So as a result, the exposure to this to video content is quite poor. So instead, what we recommend doing is utilizing the CLA's built-in video viewer. Here you'll see an example from one of our other banking clients, African Bank. They have given us permission to share the stats with the audience today in this webinar. So I will do that in a second. But as you can see, quite creative in how you can be with a skin. This pop-up again is snoozable. The pop-up arrives on the screen, and when I click on it, you'll see that it will not just open up Media Player or your built-in video viewer. You can have it open up your company branded video viewer.
In the next few minutes, you'll see how to protect yourself against phishing and spear phishing attacks.
Okay, now African Bank used to use a web portal where they used to put all their training material, send links for people to watch the videos. They used to achieve between 18 and 25% video watch rates, and then the assessment that appeared after that, they used to get as little as 8 to 15% response rates. When they implemented the CLA system, they repeated 4 modules, okay, so 4 chapters of the videos. And the video that received the lowest completion rate across 700 branches nationwide and head office was 93%, and the highest completion rate was 98%. So they enjoyed an average of just over 95% completion across all 4 chapters, which included the video and the assessment after the video. So I'm going to let this video play through just to show you the type of impact that you can achieve through the CLA video viewer. And just imagine this is a video around health and safety. If you're in the diamond mining business like Debswana, or if you're in the financial services, maybe it's a poppy or a poppier training video, or a training video around cybersecurity as this example. So it's a short video. I'll let it play through quickly.
Meet Paul Essie, 42 years old. He specializes in IT security and thinks of himself as the 007 of the cybercrime world. He likes his strawberry smoothies shaken, not stirred. You might think that IT security creates policies just to make your life more difficult, but this is not the case. Is someone planning on robbing your data? Answer these quick questions before you go.
So now, because this was the type of video that you would want to assess people's knowledge on, you can optionally have this continue to questions button appear, which when you click that will open up our CLA survey module. Alternatively, the button could just be labeled exit and it'll just close. So I'm going to click on snooze. You've seen how the survey works. So what I'd like to take you through next is what I've done is I configured the system at 22 to change themes, my system. So now you'll agree with me. I've been working in Excel. I've been working in the CLA tool. I'm now going to minimize my applications because I want to access an icon on my desktop. All right. And as soon as I access my icon, I'll notice my wallpapers change, right? That is visible. It is clear. It is absolutely visible. And so this is the power of using these subliminal channels. And you'll see that it's now creating awareness around an upcoming blood drive. Maybe it's happening this Friday, encouraging me to save a life. And similarly, when I get up from my desk and I lock my screen and walk away to go and make myself a cup of coffee, for the first few seconds, you see that my desktop is still the Standard Bank idles competition. But the minute my system determines that my device is locked and that the theme has changed, you'll see in the next few seconds, it'll immediately change over to the blood drive. So the message that is being spoken on my desktop background is consistent with the message that I'm seeing on my lock screen or login screen, and they're both repeatedly going to be seen by me throughout the day. So the message will be delivered without relying on me opening any emails or viewing any attachments. So now I'm going to type in my password, log back in again. Similarly, if my screensaver had launched, okay, my screensaver is no longer the Anglo-American video clip. You'll see it's actually just a slideshow with the same pictures as the lock screen. But what I'm going to show you next, and I am conscious of the time, I have committed to leaving a minimum of 10 minutes for questions, is the ability to have a pop-up arrive anywhere on the screen. Now, please don't be alarmed. You'll see that this particular pop-up has arrived smack bang in the middle of the screen. Good luck to anyone trying to work around this pop-up. It's virtually impossible. So what this is illustrating is that in the event of a crisis communication, now all communicators know what that means. Crisis comms happen from time to time, whether there's been a security breach, a cyber attack, if there is an incident, okay, which in businesses where health and safety is a factor, there could be incidents that need to be communicated with urgency. You may from time to time need to put this pop-up in a position which is more visible. The default, the standard is bottom right. So when you create a pop-up without consciously making it go somewhere else, it will always arrive bottom right. But what this is illustrating is our policy and compliance module. So this is the third impact channel, and this is where you have a specific announcement to make. And not only its announcement, you need people to actually read, acknowledge, and accept and bind themselves to the terms of this particular policy. So if there's a new policy, an update to an existing policy, a contract, a code of conduct, you would distribute it to employees using the pop-up. And again, you are going to achieve 90 to 95% completion without a single email being sent within a day or two. Okay, so this is the title of the policy, a short introduction message. We click on next. Again, you see you can control the number of snoozers, so you can be as lenient or as strict as you want to be. But you'll see that the pop-up is the policy is embedded in this viewer. So we recommend that this be a short one-page infographic one of the other takings from the 2023-2024 Gallagher report is that employees actually prefer content to be disseminated in a summarized version as an infographic. So that is something which, if you take those learnings, you can apply them here. So rather than having a 20-page small print, take out the main points of the policy and summarize them as an infographic. I'll show you where you can put the 20-page small print. But now it says you need to read the policy to the end to be able to continue. All right, so I cannot click on next. The next button is disabled. It's only when I scroll to the bottom, then you see that radio buttons appear, and I'm now given the opportunity to make my selection and to indicate whether I understand or do not accept. So if I choose to understand and accept, the next button is now enabled. I click on next, and at that point, my response is saved to a policy report, which is also extractable in real time, exportable to Excel, and the data is available indefinitely. Again, remember I said 90 to 95% completion within a day or two, and 0 emails need to be sent. This is your optional conclusion screen. When I spoke about where you could put the small print, you could have this as a link to your intranet where the details of that policy can be read. Alternatively, you can also have links to email addresses such as compliance officer. Click on finish, and we're done. So one last quick feature I'd like to take you through before we switch over to questions, and that is the ability to run a ticker tape. So what is a ticker tape? Whenever you watch the news or you've watched, you see the text scrolling at the bottom. That is called a ticker tape, and we haven't seen any tickers today because there are no active tickers. So I'm going to go into one of my expired tickers, and I'm going to change its date to be valid until today. Now, a ticker tape is also interactive. So when I look at my active tickers, you'll see that it can have a number of different attachment types. So when you click on a ticker message, it can open up the same things that a pop-up can open. So today we've seen a pop-up opening a document. The first example opened a PDF document. Then the second pop-up opened a survey. We saw a pop-up opening a video clip. We saw it opening up a policy. We know it can open intranet pages. So a ticker tape can be configured to open the same attachment types. This example opens a document, which is a PDF document. So let's have a look at how the ticker tape works. It can run either with or without screensaver. So in this example, I'm going to have my screensaver launch. And now that we're targeted for a ticker, okay, the ticker hasn't synchronized yet. Let's give it a few more seconds. Let me just interrupt that screensaver. So give it a few, we'll try again, launch it in a few seconds. But because we are now targeted for a ticker tape, you'll see shortly that the screensaver is going to zoom down slightly and accommodate the ticker to scroll at the bottom. Now, this particular ticker, when it arrives, is going to be KPMG branded. So you'll see the KPMG logo in the bottom left-hand corner. And then we've incorporated all the design elements of the KPMG logo. So the font size, the font color, the background blue. So you'll see everything looks very KPMG look and feel. Now, when I want to click on this ticker, I know it's just really, really slow when I'm on a Zoom call. So when I move my mouse to click on that ticker tape, everything closes. Why does it close? Because that's what screensavers are designed to do. They are designed to close when you move your mouse or touch your keyboard. But now, because the ticker tape is running without screensaver, what you'll see in a few seconds, it'll launch itself above my taskbar, is the ticker tape then becomes interactive. And when it does launch on my taskbar, you'll see that I'll be able to click on any one of the ticker messages, and it'll take me through to the linked item, which could be a document, an intranet page, a video clip, a policy, a survey, anything you want. So here we see the ticker has launched, and now that it's running without screensaver, by clicking on any one of these messages, it'll open up the linked item, which in this case is a PDF document, but it could have been any one of the attachment types. I can then either minimize the ticker by moving it out the way if it's covering my work, or I can simply click on the X if I want to get rid of the ticker. I do know I've been very, very quick. Unfortunately, I had very limited time, so I have put my details on the screen. If there are any questions, now is the time to do it. I believe Mercy has been keeping an eye on the questions. If you do have any other questions that I haven't answered, you can email at info@corporatevoice.co.za. Alternatively, if you go to our website, which is www.corporatevoice.co.za, there is a contact form and we will make contact with you. So thank you for your time. Thank you to the IABC for inviting me to present. I know it was a very quick, so I realized my video has been off. I didn't actually realize. Apologies for that. I do realize that the time was quite limited. But I hope that I've given everybody an idea of how technology should be embraced to engage employees more effectively, how technology can be used to communicate with staff, to get awareness levels out there, but without relying on people reading emails, and actually reducing the amount of email and helping to reduce what's known as inbox fatigue. So I see there are quite a few questions in the chat. So I don't know if there are any questions, Mercy, for myself or for Shungu, before we run out of time.
Okay, thank you very much, Federico, for that insightful and comprehensive presentation. Quite a lot to take in, I must say.
Yeah.
And I take it that colleagues have been posting their questions and comments onto the chat box. Without wasting much time, I'll hand over to my colleague, Mercy, to take us through the questions, comments, and share them with you and I, as well as colleagues on the webinar. Over to you, Mercy.
All right, thank you very much, Shungu and Federico, for that very engaging and insightful presentations. We do have quite a number of comments and questions on the chat. First from Christine is just a comment to say that she agrees that integrated communication framework is so important, and it's useful to get everyone on board. All right, the second comment from Michael Nord says that this clearly shows that the one channel use is no longer viable. And I think here he was referring to a reference made by Shungu to one of the insights from the Gallagher report. And Christine also says that she has read that we need the different channels to get our message across, still speaking to that channel mix. And Teresa Lee says, surprised to hear that it's still email that is popular. And she sometimes thinks that WhatsApp has become just as bad as well. I think speaking to the fatigue that we can get from some of these channels. And Michael Nord here asks about what about Yammer for mobile? Perhaps we can have reflections from the team regarding that one.
So thank you for that, Mercy. So well, I mean, Yammer. So if I could just say, so Yammer is quite a collaborative tool. So it's very different to what we do. Yes, we do get feedback from employees in the sense that surveys and pop-ups, we get data back, as you've seen in our surveys, but we're not trying to be or intending to be collaborative. There are other tools out there, things like Slack, things like Yammer, that are quite collaborative. People can contribute and post and add. It is not our intention to be collaborative. There isn't the space we want to play in. We do find that these collaborative things probably do get noisy, though, as there's a lot of posting and pushing, and it just becomes another channel that's flashing all the time. So that is my opinion. I do hear a lot of companies using the likes of Yammer and Slack and those type of platforms, but they are quite collaborative, and my experience is that they could become quite noisy but that's just my personal opinion. I'm not sure if anyone has something else to add on that.
Thank you, Federico. All right, the next comment from Christine. She asks, can comms professionals change this by themselves, or do you need IT to assist you? And this is with respect to screensavers, lock screens, and so forth.
So the IT is required for the initial setup. So we do collaborate with the company's IT departments to actually get the system implemented and loaded. But thereafter, that software you saw on my desktop is the software that would sit on the desktops of your comms practitioners, and they will be trained by our team on exactly how to do everything, how to load content, how to schedule, how to publish. So it's all a self-administered platform.
Awesome. All right, and she says she loves the measurements that really speaks to the impact that the tool may have. And then Garawa wants to know, for employees that are offline, how do we reach them on smart or feature phones? Do you have any push broadcast that can be sent through the feature phones, for example, using Bluetooth in a specific area within a specific radius?
Okay, so to answer that question, there was a previous one about shop floor employees as well. I think it speaks a similar type of thing. If you go onto the Android or Apple Play stores, you'll see that there's an app called CLA Mobile. So we do have a mobile app. However, to be honest, we've got 200,000 users on our desktop application. We've got less than 200 people on the mobile app. And that's quite simple. And the reason is that while we all think that it's a great idea to have this app for communication purposes, employees do not want internal comms arriving on their mobiles. So I think the adoption rates have been poor as a result. And so much so that this app is available to corporate clients, and we've got 200 registrations as opposed to 200,000 on the desktop app, because it's driven through companies. So the uptake is very low. How do we reach shop floor employees or environments that have got a contingent of blue collar workers? So we do a lot of work. We do a lot of work with engineering clients in mining, as you can see. We do a lot of work in manufacturing, and the way to get to these employees without relying on mobiles, which you don't feel works, is through digital signage. So we are able to push the content you've seen today, the screensavers, ticket tapes, all of that, onto strategically placed LCD screens around the organization. So depending on where they are, if it's in the change rooms, in the canteens, or in the collection areas, content can be pushed to LCD screens. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Federico. And one from Pindile, she wants to know, how do you measure the effectiveness of the subliminal messaging modules?
So the effectiveness, measuring the effectiveness of the subliminals, I guess, would need to be followed up with another channel, such as a survey. As Shungu said, you publish the content, then maybe a week later run a survey. But what you're able to do is at least measure the exposure. So one of those reports speaks about active users report, and you'll be able to see what percentage of your employees actually had the screensaver launched, how many times it launched, who's had the wallpapers applied, who's had the lock screens applied. So you can at least measure who is likely to be seeing this content, because I can see that the laptop of Mercy has had the desktop display 17 times today, these 4 different pictures. So all that data is available. At least you know that there's a fairly good chance to expect, within reason, that you should have seen this content multiple times, because it has reported that it has shown on the device.
All right. Thank you, Federico. I see we have just 2 minutes under the clock. I'll just try and rush through them as well. I think this one is really to the audience to say, how do comms colleagues in manufacturing companies communicate with their frontline employees, and which tools do they use to reach this audience? So I think I'll suggest here that the audience can drop their answers in the chat. I don't know if you want to speak to that briefly, Federico.
So I see that the question, frontline, best would be for the team leaders or supervisors to be trained in effective communication. How we do it is through LCD screens located in specific areas around either it's the working floors or change rooms or canteens, is how our digital solution reaches those blue collar workers or shop floor workers, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Thanks. And mine was, what's the recommended length of videos for optimal engagement? We know that sometimes audiences lose attention. Yeah.
It's a very good question. So the video should be within 2 minutes if it's running as a screensaver, because the likelihood of a person actually sitting there watching their screensaver isn't really what the intention is. But if it's a click through to a video, the video should be within 5 minutes. So that's what we have noted through the years. Anything longer than 5 minutes, you're probably going to have an issue. But it's important to make that video snoozable, so that the person is able to postpone it to a later date. Otherwise, if there's an option to close it, they're never going to come back to it. Similar guidelines also exist for how many images you should have in a rotating desktop or rotating screensaver. And the guideline there is to not exceed 8. So have only 8 images in a specific slide that is busy rotating, and they can maybe change every 5 minutes, but on your wallpaper, for example, but not more than 8 images.
All right, and I think the final one I'll take here would be, do you have insights in terms of employees' opinions on the usage of pop-ups and the subliminal messaging? Do they find them intrusive, or what is the case in your opinion?
Thank you. So obviously the subliminal, there's no issues here. It is passive, it's background, it's non-intrusive. The only one resistance sometimes happens is depending on the culture of the company. People may feel that their desktop background, their wallpaper, they don't want people changing the content. They want to put their goldfish or their family. So that's the one, depending on the culture. But when it comes to pop-ups, it's really about the relevance and the importance of the message. If your message is relevant, if it's important, if you're not spamming your employees, and you're only choosing your 3 to 4 important messages a month, and that qualifies to go out via pop-up. Pop-ups automatically, the importance gets elevated. So if it arrives as a pop-up, users know this is an important message, it's something that needs to be engaged with, and it gets assigned a certain level of seniority. And that's provided you don't abuse that pop-up and use it. We don't recommend more than 5 or 6 pop-ups get sent out a month. That's our recommended usage in terms of guidelines.
Thank you very much, Federico. Yeah, and I think the rest are really commendations and sentiments of gratitude from the audience. Let me hand back over to Shungu now to land the webinar for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, so I'm still sharing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mercy. I think well done to all of us for a very robust Q&A segment session. Key takeaway in that segment is that we are really sharing real life practical experiences, which we will all take away from this, and it'll help us improve on our employee communication. I think as we come to the end of this webinar, it's quite clear, colleagues, that technology is taking center stage in the work that we do, and we are at varying levels with regards to the adoption of technology. Technology is both disruptive and beneficial, but either way, it is here to stay whether we like it or not. And I think the challenge for us as the community of communication practitioners is self-awareness and being self-taught so that we're up to date with the new and contemporary employee communication channels. Talking to the varying levels, I think, speaking of myself, I'm the first to put up my hand and indicate that I'm not that tech savvy, but I am working on it. I've seen the importance of really keeping up, with innovation. And I think with that, this really brings us to the close of this webinar. And I'd really like to thank you all for joining us today. And thank you very much, Federico, for sharing your expertise and experience. And I take it you found this session informative, and we're leaving with actionable insights to enhance our internal communication strategy. Remember, effective communication is the cornerstone of a successful organization. To all of you on the webinar, thank you once again and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shungu, for being a great host, and thank you to the IBC for facilitating and creating the opportunity.
Thank you, and bye to all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers and bye.